3. David the Orphan. Life went on as normal for me at school until my birthday 2 months later in March. I remember that day very well. It was cold, easy weather, and we boys had to blow on our fingers and rub our hands to keep warm in the freezing classroom. When a message came for me to go and see Mr. Clary, I thought that Peggotty must have sent me a birthday present, and so I hurried gladly along to his room. But there I realized something unusual had happened because it was Mr. Clancy's wife who was waiting to speak to me. David, my child, she said kindly, holding my hand. We all have to accept that our loved ones can die at any moment. I looked at her, trying to understand what she meant. I'm sorry to tell you, she continued, that your mother is dangerously ill. Where was I missing in front of my eyes, and suddenly burning tears ran down my face. I knew the truth. Your mother is dead, she said. I was already sobbing lonely, and I felt I was an orphan kid, alone in the world. Mr. Clark packed my case half off and set me home on the couch for the funeral. I did not realize it at the time that I would never return to Sally House. I went arrived home, Peggotty met me at the door, and we cried miserably in each other's arms. Mr. Masterson seemed me very sad and didn't speak to me out. Miss Master, however, showed her unusual firmness of character, which she and her brother were so proud of, by checking that I had brought all my clothes back from school. After that, she showed no interest in me at all. There was a deadly silence in the house. Peggotty took me up to the room where my mother's dead body lay, with my little brother, who had died a few hours after her. Everything was fresh and clean in the room, but I couldn't look at my mother's lovely face, which would never smile at me again. Cried out crying. How did it happen, Peggotty? I asked Tommy. She was ill for a long time. Mr. David, she got hers after the baby was born. You see, she was sometimes unhappy and forgetful, but she was always the same to me, her old Peggotty. Those two downstairs often spoke crossly to her and made her sad, but she still loved them. You know, she was so sweet and loving. I was sat beside her while she went to sleep. It made her feel better. She said there was a short silence while Peggotty dried her eyes, then took both my hands in hers. On the last night, she asked me for some water, and then gave me such a fantastic smile. She looked so beautiful. Then sun was beneath the trees, and she put her head on my arm, on her stupid across old Peggotty's arm, and died like an innocent child going to sleep. After my mother's funeral, I began to wonder what would happen to me. The Mustardens didn't even seem to notice that I was in the house. They had told Peggotty to leave, as they didn't want her as their servant anymore. So Peggotty was going to her brother's in Vermont until she decided what work to do next. She suggested taking me with her for a holiday, and to my surprise, the stewardess agreed. So next morning, Mr. Barkins appeared at the door with his card, and Peggotty's keys were put it. were climbing up and sat beside him. Peggy was naturally a little sad to leave her old home, where she had been so happy with my mother and me, and at first she cried a little. But when Mr. Burke saw her driving her eyes and looking more cheerful, he too began to look happier, and he whispered to me, "Berkins is willing. You told her that." Aloud, he said to Peggy, "Are you comfortable?" Peggy lonely and said that she was. "And are you comfortable, Mr. David?" he asked. I said that I was. Mr. Burkis was so pleased with the conversation that they repeated it many times during the journey, and Peggy and both had to keep giving him the same answer. When we arrived in Yarmouth and got down from the car, we said goodbye to Mr. Burkis. Daniel and Ham Peggy were waiting for us. Daniel and Ham were exactly the same as I remember them, cheerful and generous as ever. But little Emily seemed different somehow. She was taller and prettier, but she didn't want to play with me or spend her time with me. I was really disappointed because I still considered she was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen, and thought I was in love with her. Daniel and Han were very proud of her intelligence and beauty, and just smiled when she loudly refused to sit next to me. But they all listened with interest to my stories of school life at Salem House. I told them about the other boys, and especially the handsome, clever Sterford. I admired him so much that I could not stop myself telling them all about him. Suddenly I noticed that Emily was listening eagerly, her blue eyes shining and a smile on her lips. She blushed when she saw that we were all looking at her, and hid her face beneath her hands. "Emily like me," said Peggy clearly. "I would like to see David's friend Mr. Sturford." The days passed happily. Although Emily and I did not play together as we had done before. Mr. Burkis was our frequent visitor, and so Peggy explained to me that she had decided to marry him. "I will love you just as much, David, my dear, when I'm married," she told me, holding me close to her, "and I will be able to come and see you in the car any time I like. Burkis is a good man, and I'm sure I will be happy with him. She's got a nice little house, and I will keep a little bedroom there for you to use whenever you want. You will always be come and stay." So when I returned to Blunderstone, Peggy had become Mr. Barkis, and I was glad to think of her in her own house, with a husband to take care of her. At home, my stepfather and his sister didn't seem pleased to see me, and were clearly trying to find a way of getting rid of me, as they considered school too expensive. They finally arranged for me to start work, although I was still only 10 years old and very small for my age. I was sent to London to work in a warehouse in the east of the city near the river. My job was to wash bottles which would then be filled with wine, or to pack the filled bottles in case. I was paid only 6 guineas a week. There were several other boys who worked with me, but I was the only one who had been to school. At the warehouse, workers were coarse, brown people who were used to working in dirty conditions for long hours. No words can describe the horror I felt when I realized what my life was going to be like from now on. I was pleased at having such a job, and I was also afraid that I would forget everything I had learned from my mother and my teachers. I would never find friends like Charles or Stephen, or be able to get a better position in life. It was an extremely unhappy time for me.